Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The story of the movie begins in an orphanage, and we see a person who comes to visit the place named Daniel. So he greets the owner of the house, whose name is Sally. We know that Sally is a kind and affectionate person, and she deals with the children in a very good way. So Sally starts talking about the children, and during this time Daniel notices that there are new children coming to the orphanage. So he asks Sally about them. So she replied to him and said that 3 children have arrived during this period, and she said their story was different from other children. Now we get to know these children who have arrived. The first boy is named Billy, who cannot adapt to other children or talk to anyone at all. As for the second, she is a girl named Ellie, whose mother abandoned her when she was young, leaving her with a problem she could never overcome. The third is named Hoko, who always tried to control all the children in the orphanage to prove to himself and them that he was their king. At this point, Miss Sally spoke to him and told him that he needed to treat his peers well. At that moment, a little girl from the orphanage came to Daniel and asked him to tell them a story before leaving. Since Daniel was kind and loved them, he agreed to her request. The children gathered to listen to the story. Meanwhile, Daniel noticed that Billy and Ellie were sitting alone and were drawn to the story. He told them that the story was about 3 people named Billy, Ellie, and Hoko. Of course, Daniel intentionally chose names similar to theirs to make them focus and to convey the story's message to them. He began narrating, saying that long ago, there was a very kind king who loved to help his people in any way possible. To achieve this, he decided to give up his crown and turn its jewels into a magical medallion because he disliked wearing the crown and wanted to live as one of the common people. The king discovered that the medallion had a strange power that improved the kingdom's affairs and granted any wish he desired. One day, the king was attacked by an evil army. At that moment, the king used the magical medallion and successfully protected his people. Later, Hoko, who we know to be arrogant, stole the medallion from his father to become king. However, his plan failed because Hoko lost the stone embedded in the medallion, rendering it powerless. News spread that the medallion had lost its magical power. The evil army attacked the king and his people again, but this time the king defeated them easily. Afterward, the kind king fled with the medallion, fearing the evil king Cobra would take it. Cobra tried to obtain the medallion but failed. The kind king managed to escape to a distant place and buried the medallion there. Unfortunately, the evil king Cobra captured and killed him. Years passed, and people began searching for the medallion. Among them was a boy named Billy, whose father was an archaeologist. When they arrived at a site, Billy started digging and found the stone. However, Billy's father refused to help him and asked him to return home. Billy returned, feeling very sad because his father did not believe in his abilities. Later, he met his close friend Ellie, and they spent time together. Billy told Ellie about the medallion and his desire to search for it with his father to prove his abilities. Ellie encouraged him and promised to stay by his side until they found the medallion together. The next day, Billy and Ellie began searching for the medallion. They ventured into an unknown forest with a device to detect metals. They searched everywhere, suspecting they might find the medallion. Meanwhile, 2 men appeared, also searching for the medallion. Billy discovered they worked for the evil King Cobra. Billy tried to protect himself from them by hiding until they lost track of him. Billy and Ellie resumed their search and, luckily, found the medallion before the men did. Unfortunately, the 2 men saw them holding the medallion. Billy and Ellie fled home. When they reached home, Ellie told Billy that he could prove himself to his father by showing him the medallion. Surprisingly, the magical stone Billy had found earlier was drawn to the medallion. They realized the stone, which Hoko had lost, belonged to the medallion and was in Billy's possession. Billy quickly decided to tell his father what had happened. When he arrived, he found that the 2 men had already reached their home, tied up his father, and threatened Billy to hand over the medallion. One of the men approached Billy to take the medallion, but Billy yelled loudly, wishing the situation had not escalated to this point. Shockingly, the medallion activated, granting Billy's wish and transporting him and Ellie back in time. Billy discovered that the medallion had taken them to a specific time to fix something that would prevent future evil. They arrived at a village, where the villagers approached them curiously. A man named Hoko, the rightful heir to the place and the kind king's son, appeared. Seeing the medallion around Billy's neck, Hoko realized something unusual was happening. When the villagers saw the medallion, they believed Billy was their king, angering Hoko. Hoko confronted Billy, demanding the medallion to prove to the villagers that he was the true king. Billy refused, unaware of the disaster awaiting him. News of the medallion reached the evil King Cobra, who quickly marched with his army to the village to seize it. Cobra brutally attacked the villagers and eventually reached Billy and Ellie. He captured Ellie and threatened Billy, saying he would kill her if Billy did not hand over the medallion. Billy, distressed and overwhelmed, reluctantly gave up the medallion to save Ellie's life. Afterward, Billy took Ellie and the other children, fleeing by jumping into the water. At that moment, Cobra used the medallion, wishing for the children's demise. However, the medallion did not work for Cobra, and his wish was not granted. The children saved themselves and regrouped. They decided to retrieve the medallion no matter what. They continued living far from the village, planning their next move. One day, they met a wise man named Valika, and they told him the story from the beginning. Here, Valika realized that the children needed to return the medallion to prevent Cobra from using it for his evil deeds. Luckily for the children, Valika decided to help them. He told them, "You need to learn and acquire many skills." From then on, Valika began spending his time with them, teaching them combat skills. He was very attentive to them until each of them discovered their own talent, enabling them to overcome Cobra's power. Meanwhile, Cobra used the medallion again and ordered it to destroy the village, burn its inhabitants, and kill everyone in it. But surprisingly, the medallion did not fulfill his wishes. Cobra became furious, returned to his room, and threw the medallion on the ground. At that moment, his advisor spoke to him and asked why the medallion wasn't working for him. The advisor replied, "The medallion only works if the person using it has a kind heart." Cobra became enraged and killed the advisor. He then began searching for a new advisor. As for Billy, he was with Valika, and the rest of the children started learning new and useful skills from him. Later, they stood on the shore, preparing to attack Cobra's castle. There, one of Cobra's soldiers appeared and aimed an arrow at Billy. But Valika stood in front of Billy and sacrificed his life so that Billy and his friends could complete their mission and never give up. Unfortunately, Valika died, and Billy and the children mourned his loss. They couldn't accept the situation, but it only strengthened their resolve. They decided to avenge Valika. They continued their journey and reached Cobra's castle. On the other side, Cobra was with his army, throwing a party and asking his men to do whatever they wanted, pretending to be a kind person so the medallion would work and fulfill his wishes. But after a few minutes, Cobra and his army lost consciousness due to the amount of alcohol they drank during the celebration. Meanwhile, Billy and his friends arrived at Cobra's royal castle, saw everything that had happened from above, and realized that Cobra was asleep with the medallion around his neck. Billy tied a rope around his waist and quietly descended towards the king. When he tried to take the medallion, the king woke up and shouted to his army. He ordered them to get up quickly, and they captured Billy and his friends. Unfortunately, the situation became very difficult for them. They were thrown into a cell. Over time, Billy waited for the right opportunity to escape from the prison. Indeed, he managed to escape and began searching for his friends. Eventually, he found Ellie, and he told her, "I will never abandon you." He explained his plan to her in detail, telling her what she needed to do and her role in the plan. He asked her to deliver the message to the rest of the friends and inform them about the plan. Over time, Billy's plan succeeded, and Ellie managed to free her friends and all the other captives in the same place. At that moment, they united to face Cobra's army. They seized the right moment, and a great battle broke out between them. Amidst the chaos, the medallion fell to the ground, and the magical stone emerged from it. Cobra rushed to grab the medallion, but fortunately, the magical stone was with Billy. Cobra then used his cunning plan and captured Ellie, threatening Billy that he would throw her into the pit of hell, a pit from which no one could ever escape. At that moment, Billy brought out the stone and began luring Cobra closer to the pit. Cobra underestimated Billy, thinking he was just a child who couldn't do anything. But to his surprise, Billy boldly attacked him and managed to push him into the pit of hell, getting rid of him forever. At that moment, Cobra's army turned against their king. One of them spoke to Billy, thanking him for freeing them from the tyrannical King Cobra. Days passed, the village returned to its normal state, and peace prevailed. Billy spoke with Hoku, thanking him for his help in the mission. Billy gave the medallion to Hoku, and Hoku truly changed, becoming a just king for the people. At that moment, Billy asked Hoku to use the medallion to send him and Ellie back to their time, as their mission in this era had ended. Indeed, Hoku sent them back to the present. Billy and Ellie were surprised to find that the two men they had left behind remained in the same place, but they had changed and become good people. Over time, we see Billy accompanying his father in archaeological research. He proved to his father his ability to search and that he was no longer a child but had grown up, matured, and earned his father's trust and reliance. Now, we return to Daniel and the children. Daniel noticed that the children were influenced by the story, especially the three children he had intended to address through it. He was trying to convey a message to them. Over time, he noticed their behavior improving. They began playing together happily and joyfully, without any problems. And here, the film comes to an end. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss an updates. See you in the